Well, the energy crisis in Europe is political, and a political crisis, by definition, is deliberate. There's no energy shortages. The shortages are deliberate, and this crisis has been built over time. I mean, the environmentalists, the Greens, right, and the all the hysteria over climate change. All of this is political. These are political phenomena. Created crises, created hysteria. It's all narrative. So you have to peel the narrative away and look exclusively at what's actually happening. I mean, why do you think that every major oil and gas company in the world is involved in renewable energy initiatives and the so-called energy transition, the supposed transition away from fossil fuels? Well, that's their whole business. This is like McDonald's selling salads. You know, in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a lot of public concern over the unhealthiness of fast food, so they started selling salads. McDonald's diversified their menu and sold more hamburgers. Companies recognize narrative when they see it, and they know what to do. You commandeer it, you co-opt it. Everyone with any sense knows that there's going to be no abandonment of fossil fuels. I mean, come on. What you can do is just add more items to the menu. Wind and solar are like McDonald's salads. You might use it alongside oil and gas, but never instead of oil and gas. Just like you're going to get you're still going to get the Big Mac, but you'll get it alongside a salad. Practically speaking, and frankly, scientifically speaking, it's insane to set a deadline for replacing fossil fuels. I mean, it's already actually delusional to talk about replacing fossil fuels, but putting any sort of deadline on that is absurd, which means that it's being done for other reasons that have nothing to do with the environment, nothing to do with the climate. It has to do with imposing energy inefficiency, energy sabotage, and that means economic sabotage. I mean, in Europe, in which country do the environmentalists have the most influence? Well, Germany, hands down. The Green Party in Germany is one of the most well-funded political parties in Europe. And they're the major political saboteurs of the German economy. Because of their climate hysteria, they've been able to make Germany, the people of Germany, completely irrationally paranoid and guilty about keeping the lights on for their economy. They want to power their factories by candlelight. It's ludicrous. But that's democracy for you. The population is in a state of panic about climate change, so the politicians have to be responsive to the public's madness. The population is in a state of panic about Russia, so the politicians have to be responsive to the public's madness. You know, the population is in a state of panic about nuclear energy, so the politicians have to be responsive to the public's madness about that too, and close all of the nuclear facilities. And at the end of all of that, Germany's battery dies. And that's the battery of Europe's whole economy. And of course, the madness of the population has been manufactured. And the politicians understand, or surely they must understand, that there's a bigger game being played. You know, Europe, or anyway, Western Europe and Central Europe are becoming superfluous. They're far below their replacement birth rates. They have no important natural resources. They're essentially leeches on the global economy and always have been. And the only thing that they can do now that might be financially lucrative at this point is to become a conflict zone. So now you see all this militarization. You see Germany urging their citizens to buy guns. The Ukraine war is lost for all intents and purposes. So most likely now you're going to see Poland become a hub for organizing terrorist activity in places like Moldova and Belarus and so on, so that the conflict can spread, which in my opinion always has been the plan with the Ukraine war. And they're not militarizing or wanting their citizens to be armed because they're afraid of war. They're afraid of civil war. They're afraid of civil unrest. Because people don't generally take very kindly to being superfluous. I mean, look at the farmers' protests in France or elsewhere. Sabotaged economies give rise to strife and violence. And governments need to have some means and some pretexts and some justifications and some mechanisms for cracking down on the public. Ideally, preemptively. Look, Abu Dhabi and BlackRock, they've started what they call the Global Climate Finance Center, which is supposed to be, or is supposed to develop a framework for financing renewable energy initiatives and so on. Abu Dhabi, the UAE. Meanwhile, they're spending $150 billion to expand oil and gas production. They're set to increase their emissions from oil and gas by 40% in the next 5 years. No one takes this narrative seriously because the narrative is just a political tool. Energy should go to where it is productive, and that includes the productivity associated with a higher consumptive lifestyle. In other words, some people, some regions are more entitled to energy than others because they work more and they spend more, or they will work and spend more because there are more of them and they're younger, and that's the global south. Europe can be an energy vassal of the United States, but the rest of the world, Asia, Africa, and so on, these are the new and most important markets for energy. The less oil and gas going to Europe from the Middle East, the better. They can fight each other in the dark. And America will keep the lights on for all the presidential palaces and the police stations. This is why no one who matters wants there to be a broader war in the Middle East. They don't want a war with Iran. And this is why Zionism is on the verge of extinction. Netanyahu knows perfectly well that his political career is over, but he can't accept the reality. You know, he spent his whole career starting fires, and it's always worked for him. But now the oxygen is all being sucked out of the room, and he's still in there trying to light a match. There's going to be some kind of a regime change in Israel, and there's going to be some sort of a settlement with Palestinians. Very likely some sort of a unity government over the Palestinian territories with Hamas and the PLO, and a peace process will ensue, and most probably that will be under the auspices of BRICS, and maybe with America co-signing from the sidelines. I think that the two-state solution will be attempted, and it will fail, and then gradually we'll move to a one-state solution with the Palestinian territories being integrated into Israel, and Israel being integrated into the region. Because the people who matter want stability. Now, I can't say what kind of a timeline this is going to follow, but this seems to me to be the only way that things can possibly go. I think that by the time my kids are my age, the Middle East is going to be the center of the world, and no one will even believe that Europe was ever anything but a chaotic and violent backwater. And by the time my grandchildren are my age, I think it'll be strange for someone to not be a Muslim. And yes, we'll still be using fossil fuels, but hopefully we won't be eating McDonald's hamburgers anymore.